Welcome to CHAR. My name is Rami Rivera-Frankel, and I'm here with Grammy Award-winning musician, Nelson Marquez. What's up, Nelson?
What's up, Rami? Good to see you, brother.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to be talking with Martin Gomez, one of the co-founders and the chief operating officer of Wing AI. And when I mean AI, I mean artificial intelligence. Hi, Martin. Welcome to CHAR.
Hey, Rami, how's it going? It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to talk to you guys.
Hey, Martin.
So, Martin, how did you get into UC Irvine?
Yeah, so just like every other person around there, everyone hears UCLA because that's like the school, right? And I had never heard about UC Irvine, didn't even know what it even existed. I later remember that I actually, we did a job right across the street from UC Irvine. And when I moved in eventually to the community, I remembered that I had a flashback. But I heard about UC Irvine from a math teacher who told me that I was good at math, which I wasn't, but she believed that I was. My brother's a lot smarter than me on that front. So she told me she went to UC Irvine, loved it, that it's a great community, very safe, very different, right? You can leave your bicycle in the front yard and everything's going to be okay. It's sort of that kind of community, which obviously for me was, foreign. And so, for us, a lot of that, for a lot of people that applied to UC Irvine, it was on the list at the very bottom because, the UC Irvine towards the bottom, right? You have Berkeley at LA, you have UCR because a lot of people end up going there. So Irvine was just like on the list, and I just applied to it. Frankly, there wasn't anything like beautiful about it that caught my eye. It was honestly just like fundamental luck that actually ended up being the school that I applied to. And I got into a few Cal States, didn't get into UCLA, didn't get into Berkeley, didn't even apply to San Diego. I thought I wanted to stay local, and I figured, probably not going to get into UC Irvine anyways. But then from that sort of logic at that point, a lot of the faculty that knew me, saw my grades and said, you should apply for an Ivy League. And, I didn't know which one to apply. So I just picked one out of the box. I'm like, oh, Princeton sounds like a cool one. Looked at the campus, applied to Princeton, wrote the five page essays and got into Princeton. Long story short, they didn't give me a full ride. So it was still going to be really meaningfully expensive. So then I heard from UC Irvine that I had been accepted. They gave me like the two giant grants, and then figured out a lot of the people they were saying, hey, you should apply to FAFSA. What's FAFSA? Got the FAFSA process done, and I realized like, oh, it's basically almost a full ride for the first like 3 years. So cost wise, like again, growing up, earning a lot of the dollars that we worked on in the construction and landscaping, we realized, like, is it really worth going that far for an Ivy League? At the time, I didn't know that what it meant, and so forth. But by no means, I think UCI was a great choice for me. It was close to home where, I could live away, but still come back if needed. It was far enough to see a different world, see a group of completely different people with different ambitions. And so, yeah, I'm super fortunate for that reason.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned that you remember doing a job. What kind of job were you doing across the street from the university?
Yeah, so there was this client that my dad had that's a real estate investor. Now I know he's an investor, but back then I just thought he owned a lot of houses for the heck of it. And we were installing marathon grass. Marathon grass is this really beautiful piece of green grass that usually these giant trucks from like Lowe's, Home Depots come deliver. And if you're a professional company, you have a crane that unloads them, and then you move them, and you have like 10 employees. At the time, and still this day, where we weren't this huge company, right? We were like a 3 or 4 person team. So I just remember, being someone like that was wheelbarrowing grass around like, age of 10, because that was a normal thing in at least ballpark from my father's perspective, because he had done the same thing at the age of 10. And so I remember looking at the campus and seeing the anteater like statue, and I wasn't really thinking this was like elementary time, probably, if not early middle school. But then I actually went back, lived in the apartments adjacent to that community, and I saw it, and that's sort of what we were doing. So it was a landscaping grass installation, so a typical landscaping job that your average person would probably do. For a real estate client, it's optimizing the home and enhancing probably its value.
That's amazing. That's an amazing journey to be basically doing landscape and labor to eventually attending the university there. That's a beautiful journey right there. So how did you end up meeting your partners?
Yeah, that's a fun story. So my co-founder, his name is Karan, he's the CEO of Wing. He wasn't my roommate, but he was my dorm mate. So Middleworth at UC Irvine is sort of one of the major communities, 3-story buildings, 16 different buildings separated by, sort of like grass and like a fence area. And, he was on the 3rd floor where sort of a lot of the international students were from China, from India, stuff like that. He was from Hong Kong. I knew of him you know, and I casually one day ran into him. He was hacking away at something, you know, in one of the lobbies. I just thought that, you know, he was so into it, but like the energy was there, and we basically kind of made the introduction, like, who are you? You know, I see you with you're the guy that runs around the scooter. He had a little like razor scooter that he'd get out around because he was used to Hong Kong's mobility system that's always like train or bus and somewhat walking, but UC Irvine is notorious for those big hills on the campus. And so he was the guy with the scooter, and I recognized him. And so we started talking, and I thought he was a cool guy. And I you know, back then most of the people that my friends were in other dorms, and so started talking to him, started hanging out. And you know, what I realized at the time is, you know, we were both 18 at the time, but you know, it's almost like he was like 5 years ahead of me, if not 10, as far as knowledge, industry experience, just being sort of like the quote unquote woke in the world. And I was like street smart. He was very like future smart. And I didn't know what AI, what programming or Python was. Didn't know anything about that. I just thought engineers and doctors, that's how I existed. And so, yeah, we started connecting there. Eventually he sort of got me interested in business, you know, because I was interning and doing things like that. And he started giving me a little bit of advice, like, you know, you should look for an internship for a consulting company, and you should do this to your resume and do stuff like that. And then I kind of asked him, you know, why are you here in college? Like, you don't even go to class. You know, he was notorious for not going to class because he was an excellent programmer. I didn't go as far as call him a prodigy type programmer. Wow. You know, he never went to class, but he got A's in the classes and B's. And, you know, I asked him, how are you doing that? You know, oh, I worked at Morgan Stanley doing AI, you know, when I was 14 and 15. And you know, what does that mean? You know, so why are you here? He's like, you know what? I came to America because I wanted to start a company. And I was like, oh, wow. Like I'm like 10 years behind someone else. And so I realized, what does it actually mean? You know, I'm hearing my bosses talking about startups. I'm hearing people, you know, seeing Joy Run come in and advertising on campus, Uber Eats, same thing, Uber. What does that actually mean? And so we, you know, eventually got interested, became really good friends, best of friends to this day. And, you know, we started just chalking ideas down on a whiteboard, just like that, very similar to that. We would just write down ideas of like, imagine if the world can do this. Eventually you start thinking about what that actually would look like, and then came up with the idea of the company, which is obviously completely different than what it is now. You know, thankfully, you know, once we started to get off the ground, I realized that I was going to be the people guy that was going to go out and make stuff happen, the muscle of the company, if you will. Eventually transitioned to also being the brains. He was the pure brains, and I was sort of the heart and the muscle of the company. Early on, I guess the idea, and so yeah, and then recruiting a third co-founder about a year and a half later, a fourth co-founder about 2 years later, and that's how we have the four co-founders today.
Tell me about how the culture in your company has evolved and where you see it going, evolving, changing.
Yeah, so we started as like a very heavy engineering company, right? We thought AI was everything, and it still is a meaningful part. It was very technical, very engineering type environment where if you were an engineer and you were a founder, it was very difficult to get involved with this. Not because we didn't want people, but just because there wasn't any roles for that. I think the culture has shifted a lot in the sense that now we celebrate people that want to build big things at this company. I say build big things, right? Not just at the engineering level, right? At the implementation level, strategy level. I think, you know, for us, right, we love people that take initiative, and culturally speaking, right, we're a people-focused company because we're you know, a lot of our human capital is, you know, driven through a lot of the team members that we have. And so we tend to allow people to, you know, really work on growing the divisions that they're in. And that's changed a little bit to where it used to be, where it was very heavy engineering, very like, you do this and that's it, to now it's very much, we want people that want to win. We believe at this company that winning is a conscious choice, that people can consciously decide to win at anything that they're doing. And that's our model.
Nice. That's lovely. All right. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, Martin. And thank you so much for sharing your journey and for being with us here at CHAR. And if you enjoyed the video and enjoyed the conversation and would like to hear more conversations, please subscribe. And thank you all for joining us on this journey. And we look forward to our next conversation with you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.